Picture two people. One's born in the UK in 2026 into a Christian household. He goes to church every week. He hears about Jesus from the second he was born and has the opportunity to actually wrestle with the claims and ideas of Christianity, whether that be accepting them, rejecting them, or even just questioning them. The information is just there. The other is born thousands of years ago. Never meets Jesus, never even meets a Christian, never even hears the concept. He lives his entire life, dies, and the whole thing passes without even having the opportunity to consider any of it. According to a lot of people's versions of Christianity, that person has rejected God and is on their way to hell for it. And I think most of us feel something recoil at that notion, because surely it can't be to just condemn someone for rejecting something they never even had the chance to accept. I mean, this isn't just like a caveman problem. I mean, those people still exist. Look up the North Sentinel Islands if any of you guys have heard of it. Crazy world we live in. But it's not only them. Think about someone who's born in, let's say, Oman or Yemen, for example, raised completely with an Islamic worldview, a completely different set of ethical and theological assumptions. I mean, are they eternally condemned simply because of a belief that they had no control over? I mean, because to me, that doesn't really sound like they chose it. It just sounds like geographical distribution. In other words, you believe what the people around you believe, and somehow that becomes your religion. But that feels arbitrary. I mean, I think everyone, whether believer or not, feels the force of that question. I mean, I know I do. But I want to say this clearly before I carry on. I don't think there's a tidy answer that resolves every emotional weight about this question. I think everyone who tells you this simply hasn't thought about the problem or sat with it long enough. But here's something worth noticing. If you go back to how I framed the original question, I said, according to many people's version of Christianity, but not Christianity itself. I think this decision is critical because it challenges the whole premise. Are people judged for rejecting Christianity or for the knowledge and moral awareness they actually have? Those are very different questions. Think about how we handle this instinctively in everyday parts of our lives. We don't punish a 5-year-old for the same act that a 50-year-old commits. Not because the act is different, but because the capacity to know better is different. I mean, we already build gradations of moral responsibility into how we judge people based on what they reasonably could have known. I mean, surely if we're capable of that kind of fairness and justice as flawed, limited humans, why would a perfectly just God be less capable of it than us? I think that one shift changes the whole shape of the question. It stops being, you never knew Jesus, therefore you're condemned, and starts being something far more layered and nuanced. I think instead the question becomes, what can actually be known without ever hearing the name Jesus? Christians traditionally have pointed to this idea called general revelation, which is the idea that certain truths can be found out about God just by paying attention to reality itself. This could be through order or the intricacy of the universe or even the sheer improbable precision of the world. A lot of people look at this and sense design, whether or not they'd use religious language for it. And it's not just the physical world. There's things like love, consciousness, and the strange sense that some things are actually objectively wrong and not just unfashionable, irrespective of what the majority of people think. A lot of people take this and use it to point towards something beyond just pure matter. But regardless of how actually compelling that evidence feels to you, there's a part of this story that is really easy to skip past. Christianity doesn't actually claim that there's a distinct split between good and bad people, where good people are automatically sorted into heaven and bad people are sorted into hell. There's something a lot more uncomfortable about it, which is the idea that we are all actually morally compromised in some way. Not unequally guilty, but equally in need of the same fix. John Lennox has a phrase for this that I really like, and he calls this beauty and the barbed wire, referring to the tangled coexistence of real goodness and real cruelty running through every person, every culture, and every era. So not just those people back then or all those people over there, but us too. And here's where I think the question actually lands once you follow it all the way through. And it's not, why would God judge someone who's never heard of the name Jesus? But I think it's, what would a perfectly just God do with people who've received radically different amounts of knowledge, opportunities, and revelation? And can we actually trust him with that? I don't know exactly how God judges someone who's lived and died without actually ever hearing that name. I genuinely don't. And And I think me pretending to know that I do would be intellectually dishonest. But what I do know is what Christianity claims, not necessarily about the outcome, but about the judge. That he's perfectly just, perfectly loving, and perfectly knowledgeable. That no one, not even someone born 2,000 years ago or someone today, is going to get ripped off or hard done by simply because of where they were born or what they weren't given the chance to learn. And ironically, there's actually a quiet example of this built into the very story. Abraham lived hundreds of years before Jesus, never even heard the name, and yet Christianity claims he's very much in, right there with everyone else who came after. If that's true for him, then I think it's at least a serious enough question worth sitting with for everyone else in a similar position, with the underlying message being God treats everyone's case individually, contextually, and most importantly, fairly. I don't think this fully resolves the discomfort, and I'm not sure this is actually supposed to, but I think it reframes the question from how could God be this unfair to can I actually trust the character behind the person who's actually doing the judging? And I think that's a very different question to sit with. So, I may not have some nice, neat bow to tie this up with, but as usual, I think this is one of those ideas that's just worth looking at differently, even if, like me, you walk away from it without every answer. I hope this has brought you a new perspective and a new way to see things. This has been First Principles, and see you in the next one.